Hey, Sociology 119. Good to see you there. I'm sending announcements to students as we get started right there, but I hopped over from my intro screen. How's your semester going? I think I'm Murray from the chat. So good to see you. Setting an announcement right now, telling everyone I'm in office hours, about to do some work here. How's with the sociology going? I got to check it out. You got the check mark and everything. Let me go check out your channel again here. Well, let me send the announcement. So we'll get Mubot up and going here. I'm having a great semester. Great semester. Love from Penn State. We love that right there. That's awesome. I think I remember, didn't we meet on PED? We met on PED, right? I think so. I'm going over to your channel. There you are. 343. You guys are big time. Coming over here seeing us, the little fish. Got a big chat right there. Our semester's going well. Can't believe it's almost. I know. Check out Sociology 119. You guys got a huge lecture hall. Today is right before break. You guys get 160,000 views on your videos. Oh my gosh. We're little tiny fish compared to you guys. I'll have to watch more of the videos during some break right here. You guys cover all, man. I don't teach sociology. I just do statistics. That's what I do. I do stats. and sports. We'll see here if anyone's in here. We'll throw you some points. So you don't have Mubot though. You gotta tell your dude to get some Mubot. Sometimes I wish all our videos did that well. Haha. we went to increase EduTube. Yeah. And it's really, because sociology is its own thing. I really don't verge into those topics because that's not my area of expertise. I don't teach sociology. I teach statistics. That's what we do here. We got some new lighting also. Check this out. Oh look, I can just disappear. Like some crazy effect right there. It's when you do bad green screening is what happens right there. But we got some new lighting for the studio, giving some like warm light. Sitting down these days, got my standing desk. But we got Mubot and everything, just kind of chilling out. I think it's break, so very like, not a lot of people are here. But I'm so glad you're here to say hey. We got the new lighting. Because you guys do a different, are you guys using NDI cameras? I don't know if I talked about that last time. It looks like you're using NDI from, like you're doing the multi-feed, switch camera feeds, multi-switch, and it looks like probably you're running NDI cameras. I gotta assume that's what everyone's using these days. I'm using NDI, so the network device interface cameras. Very interesting. If I ever go up to Penn State, I would definitely sit on the class. We have 4 cameras that are NDI, and do you ever feel there's lag over the NDI that are SDI to NDI? Okay, cool. Still getting SDI. Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. The 4 camera setup is really nice. It looks like you have like, I can see the 1 camera to the side. Watching the video here, you've got like the different angles on the front. So it's really good. And so I run the one-man show here where I've got the stream deck and everything. I've probably shown you everything around here, but I got my stream deck with all the buttons so I can control everything and get everything going. Yeah, NDI isn't the best. I actually have a second camera over there that I had to unplug because it causes lag, and so the quality's not always the best too. You can actually see here. I'll bring up the NDI over here. Let me go over to the main. So I'm bringing up the NDI camera, and you can see this is the feed right there that I'm bringing in, and so it actually looks way better. I'll zoom in on it a little bit there, so you can see that's the no like small filters. I did a little bit of just brightening and changing up, but that's the raw camera footage right there. So, and a little bit laggy, pretty good, but that's the raw before any sort of color correction is done, and green screening, of course. And then not as many shadows. I've worked hard on that, but I'm not that far from the green screen. That's one of the problems I have is my office being as small as it is, shooting pretty close. Like the camera's, it's not that close, but I reached about 1/4 of the way to the camera, but I've only got so much distance to work with here, so I had to put myself close up against the green screen to get the shot the way we needed it. But overall it works, and so that's the NDI feed right there. And I did have camera 2, but it was just causing lag, so I don't know. So I'm always interested in what you guys are doing and ideas on this. Is this studio on campus, or I did have a home setup. Let me actually pull that up here. I'll show you my home setup. This is fun right here. Thank you for swinging by. If you're just chilling out. This is our paper here, World of Edcraft. And so it's in Harvard Data Science Review. Dr. Andrew Lowe, Brian Stevens. My name's not clickable. And scroll all the way down here. There's Dr. Willem's studio. Dr. Willem's has the best studio. Sure, cookies. We'll put cookies here. He actually has a huge light board and everything, and he does a dock camera and everything. But that's Dr. Sean Willems. That's Dr. Andrew Lowe right there, who I helped set up their studios. This is my studio right here. I just copy image, and we'll bring it over here to a Word document. Open up our billion Word documents 2 hours later. So 1 second here. Got the Word document. Is it pasting? It looks like it did. Okay. So this is my home studio in Texas. I'll zoom in on it here. So you can see here the different things I'm using. Got similar sort of lighting. These are actually different lights now, a little bit better, but similar. Sony Handycam, the Elgato key light, the what is it? Go XLR? Couldn't think of the name of that. HD A10 Mini. There's the A10 Mini. Then Stream Deck, and then Huion tablet, and then this is the Shure SMB7. So this is my previous home setup with a NZXT computer, and this was the studio in Texas I had. And then I had a second camera over here for when I went to the board, little tiny board I did some things from. So that was the one setup, and now the setup today I don't have pictures of, but it's a good setup. It's a little bit better, a little bit more professional, but that's what we try to do right there. So this is Dr. Willem's setup, which is in a huge room in his house, and he's got like multi boards and everything. But this is something we've invested in, like University of Tennessee and also MIT. That's where Dr. Andrew Lowe teaches from. So that's Andrew Lowe, one of Time's 2012 People of the Year, top 100 People of the Year. So shouts to him, just absolutely stellar professor. And then you can see just the things. The A10 Mini is a good switcher, yeah. SMB7. So I don't use the SMB7 anymore. I use the Sennheiser. Yeah, no, the SMB7, SM7B. That's what it is. I always get it. I always reverse it at the end. Michael Jackson used it. Joe Rogan uses it. So really great microphone, like you said. And then you can see right here, Dr. Willems with his whiteboard can put text over it and everything, which is really great. So he can have text kind of pre-ready to go and good stuff. And these are other studios that have been made by people to show slides and do the things like we're doing right here, where you can just, present a screen. Because I've got other screens. I think I set up my Davey 504, but I've got a lot of, see, I got to fix this right here. I got to make this effect better. Ooh, there we go. I don't use all the screens I have. I have a billion different screens with a billion different setups. So this is my Davey 504 screen. Now you can actually see I've got a little bit of a green spill around me. I just saw. You can see it around my shoulders. Little green spill. Light's bouncing off me, the green light. It's funny, you have to learn these things, like the production of all this and the creation of everything. God, I think, let me fix my Back to the Future car. We're just having some fun here. Today is, there you go, Mubot's here. I gotta fix this scene. These are the things I haven't fixed lately. You're just seeing, and then Mubot's talking there in the corner. He shouldn't be on this screen right now. Why is Mubot here? Here, we'll increase Mubot. There's Mubot. He's supposed to be talking. Yeah, thanks. This is, these are some of the secret scenes, and I have to like fix them up. Okay, here's me. There we go. And I have to face this way. Wait, if I'm driving the car, I gotta face this way, right? Yeah. I can't even see if I do that. But what I usually do, I haven't set this up in a while. I'm too big now. I had this set up perfectly, and then with the studio changes, you gotta set them up differently. There we go. Whoa, there we go. Okay, now I can grab my car wheel, and usually I do something like cheesy, like I'm like, oh my gosh. It's like, woo! So usually we set this up for later in the semester. And yeah, I don't know why my car is all messed up on the front, my Back to the Future car. We do like Stats 1 Hacker Man. So yeah, and then I'll show you one more intro right here. I'll show you my favorite intro. Because I don't know if I've shown you that, but this is, you can tell them like, I don't know. You guys do your thing. This is what we do. And we usually get, so right now I have about 250 students watch class live. Office hours right now is kind of, no one's here. That's all right. You can look at the previous streams. Sometimes we get about 1,000 views on the previous streams, and I'm just working through problems. But this is one of my favorite openings that I've created right here in After Effects. So this kind of, I think it sets the tone for the class. Or I don't know if I showed you this one. Actually, let me show you this one. This one is from Epic Movie Guy. So here's an opening, and then we'll come back.
Like TV from other somewhat looser feel to it.
Yeah, it's got an almost improvisational tone.
This semester on Stat 201, prepare yourself for YouTube, because we're all zoomed out. Cahoots and special guests, Tiny Brian, Puppet Shark, Evil Moobot,
I am Mubot.
Morty the Rabbit, and more. Super Statistics Bros.
That was like a whole weekend of editing. So, and thank you to Epic Movie Voice Guy, the guy who does the Epic trailers, who did that. So, but that was a lot of fun. Got a lot. I made things over the years, but that is the best I can edit stuff. You take the screen, you cover it with your video. So I just took the Rick and Morty, and Adult Swim has yet to copyright strike us on that. So I can't imagine they could or would. I got copyright striked on Rocky Top a few weeks ago. I have a player piano playing Rocky Top, and I got copyright hit on that. And I was like, why would I get what is a player piano? But so it was on a class. So hopefully, you never want to get those copyright strikes or claims. I doubt you guys ever have that because you're just doing a class. You're not doing like wacky things like me. But that's what we got going on. I might start up a problem here. Let's see. Currently streaming live on YouTube. Afternoon office hours 1, 2, 3 are canceled today. And then click here. I might have lost you. You might be gone. We'll throw you 100 points if you're still here. Okay, there we go. 100 points in the chat. What did I lose my link to? We don't play videos on stream or in class anymore because you get copyright hits so fast. That's why I'm really it's a bummer. You guys do much statistics ever in your class? You guys, Brian's office hours. Currently, go. Might have some students jump in. But no, I was impressed with you guys' setup. I always like, personal opinions with Brian. I always like conversations on topics of society and how things are going. I always like for people to engage with each other on ideas and productively. We talk about economic inequality. It would be cool to have a stat person add some insight. I guess, yeah. You know my email. My email's just bstevens. We've talked. We say there's a famous stat saying, like, God we trust, all others bring data. Now that's not our money, so I'll say that. No opinions here, but it's a stat saying. I think George Bach said it or someone who said it. Really bring data. Where is it? Here it is. Edward Deming. Deming said it. No opinions on religion. I have no opinions, but it's a bring data right there. Edward Demings, who's a very famous statistician right there. So Edward Deming. American composer and economist. I can't even speak. Oh, he lived in 93. There he is, statistician right there. So a lot of, we're all about data here. You got to bring data. You got to show me some facts. And with that, the data is. My saying is the stats don't lie, the statistician does. So, you can't, numbers are just numbers. Now you can create numbers that are lies, but if a number is a number, that's just tautological. Century old Sam, the professor, will try and see if he can, yeah, definitely. And I just like examining data. I like looking into data, seeing what's going on. And then the problem is two people can view data differently. That's where the statistician, the subjective mind, comes into play. But objectively, data is data. Like, it just is. Now, if you collected it properly, that goes with sampling bias and, maybe even response bias to questions. These things we talk about that we've been going through lately: response bias, convenience bias, under-coverage bias, non-response bias, voluntary bias. Did you stratify? Did you cluster sample? So that's what we go into here, is like proper sampling methods, and can we trust the data? Because if you go out and take a convenience sample, well, then you're not going to get good data. So you have to be careful, because the way the data is collected can insert bias. But then you have to be able to show how the bias is there to give reason to not trust the data. So that's what we do. We just look into data, all about data. I think that's what I love, is that, I'll chill music here. To me, stats is kind of power, because it lets you understand how to take in information. Pulling up the assignment. Because if you don't know how to deal with information, you don't know how to make decisions. You know how to deal with the information, you know how to make decisions. And so that's all I do, know how to deal with information. Last office hours, 460 views. We did chapter 12, probability. Actually, let's do a sampling question here. If you want to see some sampling questions, we'll hop into one of those right now. Dealing with data. All I do, deal with data. Understand how to work with data, make decisions from data. And that's what the big thing with business analytics is: if a company can show they know how to use data, they make money. And if you make money, well, then that's oftentimes one of the objectives of a company. So when we deal with business analytics, it's just making data-driven decisions that help optimize our goals, and we can show that. So let's make a decision ready. Let's do a little Mount Pearson. Start off with a decision here. Okay, time for some Mount Pearson. Let's do it. Main screen. Okay. Let's do this one. This is on conditions, an automatic character recognition. This is not a super fun one, but I'm getting towards the fun parts with confidence intervals and stuff. 1853, Stat 201, Chapter 13 quiz, an automatic character recognition device. So with this in mind right here, this is meant to recognize we have electronic eyes that look down at something and can see what a character is. Like, is it A, B, C, D, you name it. And then with that, it's able to decide with a certain percent of accuracy what the character is. And probably from that, if you get 15% wrong, you could then deduce what the other characters are. So you could do, kind of fill in the gaps reasoning, or the device can, a lot of times with predictive analytics. So it gets right about 85% of the time. Now, one thing we always state for these problems, we have a saying here.
Notation,
Leo
brother.
knows it. Notation, brother. So if you're working on a problem, you have to know the notation. Knowing your notation is key to solving any problem. So when we say the character recognition device gets 85% correct, that is a claim of truth right here, which actually they label down here in the problem. So the problem's already done some of the work for us right here by saying the true probability of it getting correct is 0.85. And once again, take this note if you don't have it, that the true probability is P, and that's the true proportion. If we're dealing with samples, we'd have P hat, but we'd also have to have a sample size. Now you might notice here it does talk about sample sizes, which is n, lowercase n. And so these are sample sizes used to look at what we see. But in this problem, we say we know the truth, so what might we see in a sample? It's a little bit confusing because a lot of times we don't know the truth. A lot of times we work from the sample to make inferences about a population, hence the idea of inferential statistics. But what we're doing right now is we're saying we know the truth, what might we see in a sample? So we're using the population to say what is likely to see in the sample. This leads to us going to the formula sheet for the test. Now, one of my best bits of advice is when you're doing these problems, and a lot of people watch these later on if you're still watching Sociology 119, a lot of people watch these videos later on for reviewing for the test. And so if you are reviewing for the test, you see the link from Mubot in the chat right there with review 2. We're pinning it as the message. Going over here to review 2, you'll see that there is the formula sheet. The formula sheet is right here under formula sheet, and you'll notice down here, nice. This is how we do the problems here. We've got the sampling distributions. Notice we've already identified P. Now we're gonna have to go through and see what these things mean as we do the problem. Let's get the highlighting out of the way. So if you are doing the problems in the future right here watching this video, check out that we have our formula sheet open, have yours beside you, and while you're doing the problem, mark the notation. Mark the notation. Notice that we've already identified in this problem P, the true probability. Then we have different sample sizes, N, and then also we need to find Q. Q is going to be the complement of P. Now, reviewing from previous chapters, the complement is 1 minus the probability of an event. So Q is equal to 1 minus P, i.e. Q is equal to 1 minus 0.15, which is just adding up. Mewbot's in the chat. So with this right here, I actually found Q. Q is equal to 0.15 because it's 1 minus 0.85. So I was actually thinking of Q as I did that. Notice how P and Q add up to 1. That's the way complements work, is if you add them up, they would add up to 1. So P is 0.85, Q is 0.15. It's just either something is recognized as a character or it is not recognized. That's what a complement is. This happens or this does not happen, a dichotomous event. So now we know all the notation for the first two things. So what have we actually found right here? Read these carefully. This says the mean, because that's mu, the true mean, mu, for the sample proportion. So that is the expected sample proportion. So in other words, if I use this machine to recognize 20 characters, I would expect it to recognize 85% correct. Now we could figure out how many that is, and that would actually be 17 when you multiply 20 by 0.85. But mu, p hat, stands for the expected proportion from a sample. And it's the same regardless of the sample size. Now what does change is the standard deviation. The standard deviation is the variation, because it's deviation, so standard deviation for a sample proportion is equal to P times Q over N square root. And then it'll change based on the sample size. Since we're dividing by N right here, dividing by N is going to make it smaller, the standard deviation that is, as N gets larger. So as N goes up, standard deviation goes down. As N goes up here, nothing happens to the mean. And that's an important question for the test. We have our teaching to the test moments over here at Stat 201, where I basically tell you what's on the test. And there is a question on the test that literally says, as the sample size increases, what happens to the standard deviation? Well, the standard deviation goes down because you're dividing by a bigger number. What happens to the mean? The formula for the mean, which this is the mean, does not include anything about the sample size. So increasing the sample size does not do anything to the mean. Same thing for the other distributions down here, which is another part of this chapter we are not currently speaking about. So make sure to not look at the mean. We are only doing proportions for categorical data. So this is what we need to know for these questions. Notice how we haven't even done any of the My Pearson work. We haven't even gotten a single point on that yet. We're understanding how to read the notation and what this means and what we're trying to solve so we can solve any question in the future. Let's take a look at what they want us to do. Looking at the histograms, what is the smallest sample size that using the normal model would be appropriate? We might still have some of our notes open from yesterday. Do we? I don't think we do. We closed them out. Well, there are 3 conditions that must be met. Write them down. Condition 1, random. Did we take a random sample? And it probably says we took a random sample, which is usually met. So sure, we took a random sample. We usually mark that, make sure it's set. Question 2, are we sampling less than 10%? Less than 10% means if there's 35,000 UT students, we'd only sample 3,500. My guess is that even 100 characters is less than 10% of all characters that can be recognized, because there's characters everywhere on the screen, in books. So we have less than 10% of characters being used here, and that goes into a big mathematical theory about finite populations. Trust me for right now, the condition is less than 10% needs to be sampled to meet the condition on this being normally distributed. The third condition is the most important one, which is the success-failure condition. The success-failure condition states that we need at least 10 successes, at least 10 failures. How do we check that? Well, we have right here, and let's go back to our sheet working on this. We have right here that the success rate is 85%. With a success rate of 85%, when would we have at least 10 successes, at least 10 failures? The formula to check this to find the answer is NP is greater than or equal to 10 and NQ is greater than or equal to 10. Notice how we have Q is equal to 0.15 and P is equal to 0.85, and then we have different sample sizes. Now, the one that's going to be an issue here is Q because it's the smaller one. Timesing n by a smaller number will lead to a smaller number and might not be greater than or equal to 10. So if we try at 50, so Q at 50, or excuse me, N at 50 times 0.15, is this greater than or equal to 10? No, it is 7.5. Times out right there, that's 7.5. So let's try doing 75 here and see if we meet it. So now we go 75 and we times it by 0.15, and that should be, I'm going to try it in my head right here real quick. So the last one was 7.5. This would be 12.25. Might have got it wrong. 12.25. I know, 75 times 11.25. I knew something was a little bit off. I was like, that doesn't sound right. I'm doing a little quick in my head right there. 11.25. And that is greater than or equal to 10. So we do meet the condition. And then the remainder right here, we can check the other one just to be thorough. 75 times 0.85 is going to be, when you subtract from n, so it should be 63.75. Do it in your head, double check your work, because it's always good to take a guess, and then you double check your work. So both of those are greater than or equal to 10, which means 75 is the smallest sample size at which we meet the success failure condition. And then when you look at the histograms right here, you notice at 75, it does start to look pretty unimodal symmetric. So here it is left skewed, still a little bit of left skew, unimodal symmetric, and very unimodal symmetric. This is part 2 of the central limit theorem that states the distribution will become tighter and more normal. The second part, more normal. Notice how it is becoming tighter also because the standard deviation is getting smaller. The range goes from 0.5 to 1, and then in the last one, it only goes from 0.7 to 0.9. So it is getting tighter and it is getting more normal, the two aspects of the central limit theorem. What does the success failure condition say about this? The values of both N and P and NQ are at least 10, and the success failure condition is met. That should be right, unless I missed a question. And so once again, we got some multiple choice right here. Really quick if you just go through it like that. But you want to know why you're answering these questions and what they mean, that the success failure condition states we need at least 10 successes, at least 10 failures, and mark your notation.
Notation, brother.
Your nose right there. Let's do another one right here. We might just do this full quiz. Maybe we'll just do this full quiz. You never know. Get everything done. All the work done. Come back, check out the video. Probably lost sociology. I'm doing all the stats right now. Might have got kind of boring. I love stats, but these are okay problems. These problems they're not the funnest. I like problems like confidence intervals and hypothesis testing. That's the fun stats. Hypothesis testing is really good stats. For a final project, Stacy plans on serving a random sample of her 50 students from her class where they plan to go to Florida for spring break. From the past, she has a guess of the truth. Now, I'm calling it the truth for a reason, because when it comes to notation, you're going to have to mark this. Once again, follow through with your steps right here of anytime you get a question.
Notation,
you're gonna
brother.
hear Leo all day. That's Leo with the notation, brother. So with this, we notice, still here, dip out, editing class. Thank you so much. I'm really good talking to you. I get sad. We only have one person here, but it's chill for me, man. So 50 students. I'd ask you the questions. What is 50 in notation? But 50 in notation is N, sample size, and the guess at the truth is P. Now, once we find P, we instantaneously find Q. So you play the PQ game in our class where you just find the complement, and there it is right there. Now, she's only taking 50 students as her sample, so when we check the success failure condition, we can do it in P first or whatever. 50 times this right here. So you basically cut it in half, move the decimals around, and you get 6. And then the thing you'll notice, the more I solve these, if you're wondering how I'm able to do them, is that both NP and NQ have to add up to N, which is 50. So because you're basically doing, like imagine this, I tell you 50 M&Ms are in a bag and 12% of them are blue. We'd expect 6. That's what NP finds. It finds the expected amount of successes, and NQ finds the expected amount of failures. So we do not meet the success failure condition right here. We would assume that 50 students is less than 10% of all her class, because probably more than 500 students go to her university. It does say it's random, so we're good on that. And then she does not meet the success failure condition. The nearly normal condition is a different condition, and we're not dealing with quantitative data. So these do not apply. That does not apply to the question. That does not apply. Those are completely not applicable. And then she doesn't meet the condition, so we can't mark yes. So she does not meet the success failure condition because she does not have at least 10 successes, at least 10 failures, found by checking the NP, NQ are both greater than or equal to 10. So she does not meet that condition. Mark your notation. Leo will get mad if you don't do it. A little bit longer of a problem, but kind of along the same vein right here of what we're doing. This one right here is a bit of a pain at times. I'll explain why. The concept for this question is the central limit theorem. Let me mark it first. Mark the question, and this concept of what we're meant to learn right here or practice is the central limit theorem, which states, we'll look at a little demonstration of it, an automatic. So let's go to the central limit theorem and see this. So I always say to my students, what are the 2 things the central limit theorem states? Thing number 1, the distribution will become tighter. And we see that because we're dividing the standard deviation by the square root of n or n. So the standard deviation gets tighter because the larger the sample size gets, the smaller the standard deviation gets. And we're literally talking, I'm pointing to the formulas right here next to me. That this formula right here and this formula right here, whichever you're doing, proportions or means, the central limit theorem applies, that your standard deviation, which is spread of data, deviations, how far are they away from each other, the deviations get smaller as n gets larger. So that's part number 1. We'll see it visually here in a moment. Then part number 2 is the distribution gets more normal. So it gets more normal and tighter. Tighter is part number 1, more normal is part number 2. So here we are with some data that is skewed to the right to the high, left to the low, whatever way the Monster Man's tail goes. So we got to say hi to Monster Man. Monster Man, what are you talking about? Anytime you got some data like this, you're wondering how it goes, you just got to say, you draw your Monster Man, and there's Monster Man right there with his monster tooth, and then you draw a little highlight on his tail, and this is the high side, so that's the higher numbers right there, and the lower numbers are on the other side. So it's right to the high, left to the low, whatever way the Monster Man's tail goes. And that's our saying to remember what way skew goes. Right to the high, left to the low, whatever way the Monster Man's tail goes. So we know this is a right skewed distribution, pulls to the high side or the positive side. And with this, what would happen if we took 25 observations from this? So this is 25 randomly collected observations, which is part number 1 of making sure we meet the conditions for it to be normally distributed. And there is the mean. This is the mean of a sample size of 25. I wish that was lowercase n. Now we do this again, and we take another mean of sample size 25. So what you do is you get a distribution of means, because if you keep doing this, we'll see how the means distribute on this number line. And notice there's variation. So the mean is not always going to be the same because the random sample from here, the parent population, the original data, got a little bit different of data now. It's still right skewed though. The parent population is a little bit different than the sample distribution. So the sampling distribution will make its own distribution of sample means, which is more normal and tighter. And actually this looks pretty darn normal because at some point the central limit theorem kicks in, and it's when we have a sample size basically that is large enough for quantitative data. This goes to a different chapter, so I'm not going to go too much into it right now, but it still applies that as n increases, the distribution will become more normal and tighter. So we look at their data and we see the same exact thing. Notice how it's left skewed to start, and then as we increase the sample size from 20 to 50 to 175 to 100, it gets more normal and tighter. The spread down here, determined by range at this point, is 0.75 to 0.95, but here it's 0.5 to 1.0. And so they're going to ask you about questions about this, which demonstrate the central limit theorem. The easy ones to answer are that it is skewed to the right, and then what we're going to have here at 75 is it's going to be approximately normal. And this is because it does meet the at least 10 successes, at least 10 failures. We can check that right here. It doesn't ask, so I'm just going to do it real briefly. If we go P times N, we get that many successes. And then if we take Q, which is 0.14, remember P and Q add up to 1 right next to each other right there. And then we times that by 75, not 0.75. We get at least 10 successes. So I can say at 75, it is approximately normal, and then it'll be even more normal at 100. Now, the spread of the data is also an easy one. Here it's 0.5. So we go to the first one, and the spread is going to be greater than 0.4. And then the next one, we look at the spread, and we're just looking at the range right here, 0.35. Notice how this goes from 0.65 to 1.0. So that's a spread of 0.35. And so that's going to be between here and here. The next one I think is 0.35 also, not that I've done this problem, then 0.2. Just notice the range. We're just figuring out how far these things are away. So that's 0.35, which is between there. And then 0.2 is between here. Now, the tough part on this one is, and it's very annoying, where is the peak? Now, the peak should contain, I think I've seen one time it doesn't, 0.86. So notice how this goes from 0.5 to 0.6 to 0.7 to 0.8 to 0.9. 0.86 is here, and that's where the peak is. The first one has a peak between 0.8 and 0.9. What you sometimes have to do, and I'll do it for this first one, is you have to label your axes, which they might not do for you. I wish they did it on all of them, just to make it easy enough for you to see. You'd have to put in here 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, and the peak is thus right here. Hey, Rajesh, good to see you here. If you have questions, let me know. That's where the peak is out of the distribution. And other ones might be harder to see because the peak for this one is right here. That looks to be the peak, and that's 0.7, 0.75, 0.8. Really? Is this a trick one? Oh, man. To 0.85 to point. I think I got one of the trick ones. I think I got one of the ones that I really get mad about. Wow, if that's right, I'm going to be a little bit not happy. This one, it gets ridiculous down here with this. So that's 0.7, 0.75, 0.8, 0.85. 0.85 is the lower of that pin. 0.85 is the lower. And then the last one, if you have a question, let me know. We're just working through this problem. That's 0.75. That's 0.8. That's 0.85 right there. And 0.85 is in the middle of that bin. So 0.85 is in the middle of that bin. So a bin with 0.85 in the middle. Did I miss it? There it is. There we go. So it should be right. Ooh, is this one right? That's so mean of it. Is it? Really? This one is a bit mean of a problem. I have my qualms. So it should be one of these right here. I'm thinking that I got. We got our first question wrong out of the day. That's 100 points right there. First question wrong of the day. Woo! Can't be this one. Oh, is it really this skewed? No, they're not going approximately normal down there, are we? No. Wait. Did I seriously do the wrong way skewed? Wait, skewed left? Oh my gosh. You know what it is? Okay, I did everything right. I did everything right. So what it was is in my demonstration with the previous, in my demonstration, Brian doesn't know which way things are skewed. In the demonstration over here, this was right skewed, right to the high, left to the low, whatever way the Monster Man's tail goes. But on the problem, on the thing we were actually trying to do, the actual problem, it is a left skew Monster Man. I thought I did it very carefully, but I went a little too quick and I forgot we have a different problem. For my example explaining skew, I went the wrong side, and it is a left skew Monster Man because he's got his tail going to the left side. So I was like, what did I do wrong? How did I do any of this wrong? I did it very carefully, step by step, day by day. Happens right there. You never know. So be careful. Easy to make mistakes on these. It is a left skew Monster Man that becomes more normally distributed as the sample size increases. These are usually the tough ones right here that are usually where mistakes are made. Central limit theorem here again. It's like we got to know this thing called the central limit theorem. Got to know what it is. 4113. Stat 201, chapter 13 quiz. When they send out fundraiser letters, the philanthropic organization gets a return from 5% of people. So with a return from 5% of people, they're going to look at different sample sizes here. And we can mark the notation here. Let's do it. I tell you to mark it, so I got to mark it too. I don't know which videos people are going to watch or which segments people are going to watch, so I want you to see how to do this no matter what problem you're working on. When you do problems for the test, do this right now. Print off the formula sheet. And with the formula sheet printed off beside you, start going through and marking notation. So since this is proportions, it is categorical data. So this is proportion of people who will respond, which is P. If you see proportions, that's P. Also, P is right here, and P is proportions. I guess we can just highlight that completely in yellow because P is proportions, and the true proportion is equal to what we expect from the sample proportion. So we've already found those quantities. Since we know P, we can find Q. If P is equal to 0.05, Q is equal to 0.95, and just getting the practice, 1 minus P is equal to Q. So knowing that formula right there, P and Q are complements, you can find it really quickly. So now we've found Q, there's Q, we've found P, there's P, and then we have different sample size utilized for the problem. And look at how much of the notation we've already marked through. If this was a problem on the test, we'd be good to go. The only thing we don't have right now is some sample proportion that could be used to say what is the probability of seeing this or how unlikely is this. So it would have to say like in a sample of 200, we saw something like 6%. So that's how the question would phrase that P hat right there. It'd say from a sample of 200, we saw 6% because that's the sample proportion. Every other quantity has been found. I'll highlight it here. This quantity has been found, and this quantity on the far side can be solved for. We have that marked for sample size, wrong color. Do an orange, nice orange. That quantity can be solved for right there. So the question doesn't go the route of giving you a sample proportion and then asking you the probability or to give it a z-score to standardize it. The question just gives you notation and then has you look at the central limit theorem. But once again, have your formula sheet out, write the notation, know how it's worded, because if you know the notation, questions get way easier on the test. You just start marking things. You're like, oh, I have this, this, this. It wants the sample. It wants the estimate of the mean, or what would you expect for a sample proportion? Well, that's going to be P right there. And then you can understand a little bit of theory too. As the sample size increases, the center will do what? So once again, let's look at the formula right here. The center is this. As sample size increases, the center will do what? The center is the mean. Well, there's no sample size in this formula, so Rock knows. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. Nothing at all. Stays the same. The shape of the distribution will become what? And we can view the pictures for this, but this is the central limit theorem, which states as sample size increases, the distribution will become more normal and tighter. The more normal is the shape changing, which you can see right here. So it's definitely becoming more normal. Becomes more normal. Yep. The variability in the distribution is going to do what? And you can see it 0 to 25 and 0 to 15%. And that is also shown over here in the formula, because we always want to see how the formulas do it. By n increasing, standard deviation goes down. So if n increases, you're dividing by a bigger number. Dividing by a bigger number makes standard deviation smaller, mathematically speaking. So the standard deviation would decrease, which is a measure of variability. And if you don't see it mathematically, see it here visually, that it goes from 0 to 25 and 0 to 15 and is tighter around the center. Simulations show the truth. That's what simulations do. Simulations model reality. So the simulation shows it. That's what's going on right there. Simulation going to do what simulation does. Pretty easy one right here. As the sample size increases, the standard deviation of the sampling distribution will do what? I wish it said the standard deviation. Oh, it does say of the sampling distribution. So yeah, I was like, I wish it said that. And it's the same thing we just did. As the sample size increases, the standard deviation decreases, mathematically speaking. Really good question to get right back to back because it's the same concept. As the sample size increases, the mean of the distribution does what? The mean of the sampling distribution for the mean or the proportion does what? Now notice I did mention the other part of the chapter right here, which we're not going to get to today, but here it is. And do you see n anywhere in here? No. So as sample size increases, what happens to the mean? And it's talking about this quantity. Remember, mu is mean. That's a mu right there. That means the expected sample proportion, or what we would see on average, the mean, or the expected sample mean for the other part of this chapter. And so what happens to these quantities as sample size increases?
It doesn't matter.
There you go. Doesn't matter. Sample size does nothing to them. They stay the same. Once again, know your formula sheet. If you have your formula sheet, which you're allowed to have on the test, you can see that there conceptually. Another quick problem right here. Let me put this one. I think people might need help with this one. Remind me later. I'll do the full quiz today. Doing a little speed run-ish of the quiz. My eyes blurring, so I can't see the screen. Wait a minute. Left eye, you want to work? Say 40. I think this is 46. 47. There we go. I can see it now. My eyes are bad. Chapter 13 quiz. Suppose 30 supposers. 30% of the people. Suppose 30% of the people in your town talk on their cell phone and drive at the same time. If you stood by on a street corner and watched 50 people drive by, what is the standard deviation or model you would use to find the expected sample proportion, or to model this data, let's say? Well, take the question, bring it over, and here we are on the formula sheet. So I want to reiterate, anytime you're doing a problem, the number one thing to do is to mark your notation. Number one thing to do. Mark your notation. This is a very short problem right here, but it actually gives you all the information needed to solve it. Erase that. Busy. So we have here the sample size of 50, which is found right here. We have here, suppose the truth is this. Now, I wish it made it more clear that they're assuming that that is the truth. So the truth is assumed to be 30%, which means the not truth for the people who aren't talking on the cell phone is this. Remember, Q equals 1 minus P. They are complements of each other. We repeat these things a lot because we have to memorize them to know how to do them. We've now found a lot of the quantities in this problem, and that's how easy it is to mark the notation. So once again, practice marking your notation. They want to know the standard deviation. So it says, what is the standard deviation? That's this quantity here. So we plug into the formula, P times Q over N square root, quote 191. P times Q over N square root. Just plug in the values. That easy. Do a little quote 191. Hopefully, if you're watching this in the future, leave a comment on the video. Like and comment and subscribe. Let's go find the answer. The thing is, this is going to be a decimal, so actually you can tell the answer by looking at it, because it's not the sample size, it's not the truth, and it is this then. Logically, it has to be. So it's a little bit, they should have had you input the value. I don't know why they would do it this way. And then you square root it. There you go. So it is that value, and I don't know why they didn't just have you numeric input it. Because, I mean, if you know what button to click, it's the right answer. Same sort of question right here. It's literally the same thing, but asking a different question. What proportion would you expect to see? It's kind of neat that they did these two back to back. It says, what proportion would you expect to see? We've already got everything marked on the question, and now they're changing it to what would you expect? And the expected sample proportion. So mu can be read as expected, because it's the mean, like you expect the average. And then p hat is sample proportion. So proportion. So this can be read mu p hat can be read expected sample proportion. And with that, it's equal to p. So what is p? It's this. So literally we would say here, if we solve this, that mu p hat is equal to p. P is equal to 0.30, and that's the answer. We'd expect 30%. That's all it is. Seems like a tough problem, but it's like, oh, what's the mean of the sampling distribution sample proportion? This one right here looks to be another kind of not so bad problem. It's multiple choice. It's such a quiet day. I think everyone's gone home for fall break. Not fall break. Recess. The TV show. They've gone home to watch it. The distribution of scores. So with this right here, you can see they are left skewed, and this is quantitative. A little bit wondering why this one's in here. She simulates the distribution of the max test for 37 different tests with a sample size of 5. The histogram to the right shows a simulated distribution of sample maximums for these tests. Would a normal model be useful for this distribution? Well, not right now, because this is skewed to the left. And so no, the normal model would not be useful because it is skewed. The mean of the distribution is this, and the standard deviation is this. Would you expect 95% to have their maximums within 7? Well, no, because you can't use the empirical rule. No, the empirical rule is based on normal data. This is an okayish question. It kind of ventures into the next chapter of this part of this, because it's quantitative data. So we're not going to really talk about, I want to talk about why we have to meet the conditions. The most important thing to know for this problem, take notes on this, is that if you have the conditions, random 10%, and then for categorical data, success failure, or for quantitative data, nearly normal, then if you meet those conditions, it's normally distributed. So what happened here is they didn't meet the conditions. If you don't meet the conditions, it's not normally distributed. If it's not normally distributed, you can't use the empirical rule, which is based on normal data, the 68, 95, 99.7 rule we talk about. So you just can't use it because it's not normal data. So yeah, it's just like, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it on the problem right there. Next problem, 5303, Stat 201. Take some good notes. Chapter 13 quizzes. The proportion of adult women in the United States is approximately 51%. Let's just say that's the truth. A marketing survey telephones 500 people at random, complete parts A through C. What proportion of the sample would you expect to be women? So with this right here, what are they asking? Well, once again, take your data, have your formula sheet beside you. I can't state this enough. Trust me, go print off the formula sheet and then have a sheet of paper beside you. Do what I do. This is how you get really good practice and you know what you're looking for. So with this, it's basically saying we know 51% are women. We just found P. It says, suppose this is the truth. Basically, I know it doesn't say truth, but I wish it did. And 1 minus P is Q. So 1 minus 0.51 is equal to 0.49. And 0.49, my 9s get worse every day. Put it out to me. That is Q. So Q is equal to 0.49 right here. Sample size is how many we sample. That should have been orange. And with it being 500, we now have the data. What proportion would you expect? When it says expect, mu is expect. So when it says the proportion that is expected, that is mu p hat, the expected proportion. Well, we just go to the formula right here and we say mu p hat is equal to p. P is equal to 0.51. And just think what you're saying. If I sample 500 women, I'd expect 500 people. I'd expect 51% to be women. What is the standard deviation? This question is now asking us for the standard deviation right here. And we'll highlight this in blue circle answer. And so now the standard deviation is going to be P times Q over N square root. So P times Q over N. And I want you to notice that all we've done is mark the notation and then know what it's asking when it says the standard deviation for the sampling distribution. That's the standard deviation of the sampling distribution sample proportion right there. And so now we solve this. It's going to be about 3%, guesstimating 3%. 3%, really? Fun times. 3%, 2%. 2.23. So it probably once as a decimal it does, so 0.0223. Only did 3 decimal places though. How many women on average would you expect to find in a sample of this size? This is actually breaking into the NP and Q condition. So they're actually doing the NP and Q. They're not actually checking it to make sure they have at least 10 successes, at least 10 failures, but this is going to say from a sample size of this amount, if 51% are women. So if we have a sample size of 500 and 51% are women, then we would expect, so it's gonna be 51 divided in half, 510 divided in half is 255. I think it's 255. Make your work. Really? It is. Oh my gosh, I'm just slipping on the keyboard. There we go. Ignore me. There we go, 255. Just do it in your head. It's much better. Don't trust your calculators. Never trust calculators. So we've got all the answers right here. 0.022 is the only one I need to put in my head, really. 0.022, 255, and 0.51. And we should get it right. There we go. Good question. That one's probably one of the best questions we've done so far. Really just does it like we might do it on the test. Very kind of similar short questions that are like that. Gallup is doing a poll here on suffering. Make sure I don't have my meeting at 11:30. I think it's 12:30. 12:30 meeting. 12:30. Okay. Gallup is doing a poll right here. I'll mark the question. 57 out of 3. Stat tool. Top the 13 quiz. Gallup regularly conducts a poll. They do a lot of polls where they ask people, how are things going? Are you thriving or struggling? Explain what this means right here. 0.488, and that is p hat. Well, once again, the context of this question, Rock knows.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't really matter. The question is, what is p hat? P hat is a sample proportion. P is the truth. So on election day, see if you can answer this. I know you're not here, but on election day, do we find out P or P hat? Most people would say on election day, we find out P, the truth. Now the polls leading up to election day are P hat, the sample proportion. So when we ask people who they're going to vote for on a survey, that's a P hat because it's a sample proportion to estimate the truth. So what we have here with P hat is an estimate of the truth from a sample. So once again, it would come from a sample size. So this 206 is very important. The meaning of this is that researchers have nothing to do with confidence right now. The meaning of 0.488 is that 48% of the 20,000 such and such people, the researcher's best estimate of P hat, no, the researcher's best estimate of P. So P hat is the best estimate of P, which is the truth for all people. Now it wants you to calculate the standard error. This is a look into the future here, because what we've been calculating lately is the standard deviation of P hat, which is P times Q over N square root. The standard error, which is based on estimates, is P hat times Q hat over N square root. The lower formula is used in place when you don't know the truth. The truth is better to use when you have it. If you don't have the truth, use estimates of the truth, and it's called a standard error now. It's no longer called the standard deviation of P hat, it's called the standard error of P hat. It's an estimate of the standard deviation because it's our best guess of the standard deviation. So it said like something like 48.8, I think it was, or I think it was 0.488. Q hat works the same way as P hat. I'm going to assume these are the numbers. I'll check when we get back. I think the bottom number was 28. We'll double check these numbers. And then this would be 0.512. Once again, if you're wondering how I'm getting Q hat right there, Q hat is 1 minus P hat. So you go 1 minus 0.488 and you get Q hat right there. Let's double check the numbers before I start solving this. And it is 0.488 and it's a 6 right here. Now, would that have come into a problem? Might not have. I was close enough. I mean, it's a very small decimal change at the end right there probably, but we're going to put in the right number. And so now we simply solve this out to find out what it is. And let's try it. So 0.488 times 0.512 divided by 20,006. And then we go right here and we square root, and that is the standard error. If I wants it to 5 decimals, 7 decimals. Are you ridiculous? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's going to round up. Both these last ones are going to round up. What I prefer to do is put it in R and just say round it for me. So that may have came back to be a problem. The standard error is the best estimate of the standard error is the best estimate of the standard deviation, which measures the amount of variation in the sample proportion expected to be seen from sample of this. That sounds right. The best estimate? No. The standard error is the best estimate of the standard deviation of the sample distribution of the proportion, which measures the amount of variation in the sample. No, it'd be based on the sample size. That should be right. Good. Yeah. Little tricky between these two, but it's based on a sample size of this, because when you look at the formula, it is based on a sample size. So it's not for all samples. It's based on a sample of this size. If this gets smaller, this gets bigger. If this gets bigger, this gets smaller. So last part of that, that's an all right question. Last one right here, and it's actually the same sort of question. Gotta love these questions right here. So it's the same concept. And once again, it really boils down to knowing notation. So we've got the same question right here. Walk through on how to do this and solve it. Pew Research, not Gallup this time. They are trying to be nice to everybody. Pew Research in 2018 took a random sample of this many teens. 44.6% reported that they were online almost constant. Once again, we have to know what p hat is. That is the proportion from the sample. I mean, take a look. We have 44.6% of the sample of 1,058 teens. So that's an estimate of the truth of what percent of people are online almost all the time. This is the researcher's best guess of the true proportion, and it is the sample proportion observed in a sample. Standard error works the same way, 44.6, 1080, 1058. So we go back, and we go right here. And 58, 6, then we subtract, and we get 5. Okay. And if you're wondering how I got that, that is Q hat. And so we'd go here and go 1 minus 0.446. We get that right there. We what? 3% again. 2%, 1.8%. No, it's going to be smaller. It's going to be 0.008. That's my guess. 0.008. Always take a guess. 0.008. How close are we? 0.008. Ah, twice that. Twice that. 5 decimals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Does not round. Double check, make sure you got 5 decimals. 1, 2, 3, 5. Good to go. And the standard error is the best estimate of the standard deviation, and it's based on a sample size right there. Oh no! Did we get this one wrong? Didn't. Uh-oh, what did we get wrong? What did we do? The standard error is the best. It's not the margin of error. We're not estimating the margin of error. Margin of error is twice the, well, for 95% confidence intervals is 1.96 or 1.95996. But people don't know the z-score. I like memorizing numbers. The margin of error is something we'll be covering with confidence intervals, so it's verging into like new ideas and how these are used. Kind of don't like it because it's like we haven't gotten to those ideas yet. So, my person doing okay right here. But we just did the full quiz. We just did every question here, every single question done on the quiz, talking through them, which means on the homework, you go to the homework and you say, I can do the homework now. Got the homework. Got a little bit of time. Probably answer some emails here in a moment, but you go to the homework. Your eye starts blurring a little bit. Go to the homework right here. Take a look. Homework. Homework has a lot of the same questions. Check out next class. Would you use the normal? No, it's not normal. It's skewed to the right. Can't use the normal on that. Well, there's another part. Can you use the central limit theorem then? No, it doesn't apply because it's not normal. Central limit theorem needs normal data. When would it be normal right here? What is the truth? The truth is 7%, so it'd need to be 200 as the NP-NQ condition. What does it say? We'd have at least 10 successes, at least 10 failures. Once again, knowing the concepts is important right here. So if she only has 30 students and 12%, she'd only have 3.6 expected successes. So she does not meet the success failure condition. Not meet it. 26 point. Yeah, this looks to meet it. Yeah. Meets all the conditions. They have at least 10 successes, at least 10 failures. Is that all it asks? Really? Wow. Not bad at all. What proportion would you expect to see? Well, I'd expect to see the truth. Thanks for showing me the formula. The sample size increases, the standard deviation of the sampling distribution gets smaller. Should have done them in order. at all. What would you expect the shape of the sampling distribution to be? 242 would meet success failure, so it'll be unimodal symmetric normal. What would be the mean? Well, the mean is the truth. The mean is there. What would the standard deviation be? P times Q over N square root. There it is. 3 decimals. What? P times Q over N square root. I always forget the square root sometimes. Always. I thought that looked kind of small. And we did this one, longer one, and then we did this one. And as the sample size increases, the mean stays the same. We basically did all of them. Little secret ending right here if you'll watch. Well, we're gonna head off. Bye for now, everyone. Bye! 5 hours. We've almost got these new intros ready. We're almost there.
This has been going for like 20 hours. This ends now.